Bonjour! Hi! In this demo, Andy Morell, a Microsoft Azure MVP, is presenting us how you could build a VM and a set to be able to run virtual conferences using Microsoft Azure.
Basically, what we had was in April or March and April, the team that myself and Frank are on, the live coders, were putting on a conference, an online conference on Twitch, and we were hitting this big, so we were looking at, I think we ended up with 14 different speakers with talks up to 45 minutes each. The actual whole stream overall was 17 hours. We had graphics overlays, we had everything sort of there ready to go. The major problem was, how were we going to run this and from where? So, for example, we had sort of Frank on one side, we had speakers from all over the world, and we had to amalgamate all their streams and all their talks into one stream and then push that to Twitch. We tried doing things like running systems locally, like on my computer here. But the problem with that is you have internet service providers that don't allow things through firewalls, or they packet shape everything that comes into your system, and you just lose so much and it lags, and there's so many variables that you just can't make a change for. For example, we had one of the live coders, Jitter Ted. He's in the Bay Area. When he connected to me, it was laggy. It was like frame by frame, 1 frame a second. It was really, really bad. And yet Clancy, who lives in Alaska, had no issues whatsoever. He connected straight through. It was fine. There was no jitter. There was no frame by frame. He was like crisp, everything straight through. And we were.
Yeah,
everyone
and all
was just
those
like,
people
what?
have good connection also because they are live coders, so they are used to stream and stuff it's not like if it was the first time and the person doesn't have a good connection, or like doesn't know all the tricks to optimize inside their house and everything, the connection, like they know those things, right?
Yeah. This was the thing. We were all, the actual first set of speakers for the Live Coders Conference were all broadcasters themselves. We were all live coders, and we were all just demoing what we were doing on Twitch, a lot of us. So there was a bit of ML, there was a bit of IoT, there was a bit of everything for everyone, including the trolley problem, which was a very interesting talk by somebody else called Sad Moody, and that was a very interesting talk by him. So to cut a long story short, we were trying to sort of decentralize that, so it can't be me producing the whole stream from my local machine. So the idea was, what we did is we created a VM up in Azure, and it was just a Windows VM that we installed OBS on, so Open Broadcast Software. It's all open source. We just installed it and go, in some little ways. But what we hadn't sort of accounted for was things like people's connections again. And so we had some satellite servers. These satellite servers were where the speaker would stream to, and then that satellite server would then stream it into our broadcast box, and then from that broadcast box we would go to Twitch. So I'm going to take a step back a second as well, because I'm spewing out words and people are like, what are you saying? So when you broadcast from your PC to Twitch, you use a broadcast piece of software. The most common one and the free one that people use is OBS. As I said, it was Open Broadcast Software. Now, when you connect to Twitch, you can connect directly to Twitch to broadcast your stream. That uses a protocol called RTMP, which is real-time messaging protocol. And that is literally a push, here's some data, go. And Twitch does a lot of fancy decoding, transcoding, and sort of pushes that out to us, the viewers, like you're watching this stream from Frank's PC. What we wanted to do though is we wanted to amalgamate everyone's stream into a single stream. So the main VM, the broadcast VM that we created, was an OBS system, and that pushed a stream out to Twitch. So what we did is we had all the speakers broadcast their stream to that server. So so we had an RTMP servers dotted around the planet, which then rebroadcast that into the central system. It sounds overly complicated. It's not. That's really. I will show you some.
So people were streaming from their PC and broadcast him to a RTM server, and that one was connected to Twitch.
Yes, pretty much.
Oh. I thought everybody was. I thought like the host or something like that was inside the VM running the OBS, and kind of what we do right now, inviting with whatever. Like right now I'm using NDI through a Skype call, and I thought that's what you were doing.
No, it wasn't Skype and NDI. It's a sort of similar system. So from that standpoint, it was the host of the actual show on the day was Chef Brent and C# Fritz. I'm talking about the first conference here, and they were streaming their system to the same box. So
everybody was streaming. Okay.
Everyone was streaming to a personal RTMP server, and then we were using those. Then we were sort of amalgamating those into the single feed to go out to Twitch. Now, the person who was the producer was me. So for the first stream, for the first conference, there was only one producer. That was me for the whole thing, and yes, it was a long time. I was up for 20 hours, and I was sat there just going click, click. Oh, ready, click. So yes, like you yourself, Frank, right in front of you now have several scenes, and you can switch between those scenes. That's what we had. So we had each and every RTMP stream coming from each broadcaster on a separate scene, and I was just flicking between the two, and that's it. But then we brought in some automation for Live Coders Conference 2, and I'll talk about that later.
Oh, that's very interesting, and yeah, it must be exhausting to be, because you cannot daydreaming when you do that. Like I experienced that for like by slice of 5 hours during Ignite, where I was moderator in the chat and like trying to answer question and stuff like that for the main e-roll page. So a lot of traffic and question and stuff like that. I think in the keynote, that was one thing that was different this year. Even during Satya keynote, we had the chat open. So I think there was like something like 2,000 message or question during that first keynote. So question was just like, I was not alone. We were a full team to answer those questions, but you cannot daydream. Like, it's very draining in energy because you are always focused and ready to act, and like you need to take an action. Sorry, I'm clipping my fingers. Must be awful to anyone with a headset. Sorry.
Clicking. No. Yeah, so this was the thing. It was like for 20 hours I just had to concentrate, and so it was flicking switching those scenes. But then that was the RTMP setup caused the things between presenter and the host. Yes, rollers. What it was
I was give a little bit more context for anyone who's not a streamer and like may not be aware of those 50 seconds.
Right. So what happens was during the first Live Coders conference, we had a gap between when somebody would stop talking. So the speaker at the time would say, "Right, I'm off. Thank you. Bye for now." I would switch it and then tell Chef Brent, the host, that he should start speaking. But because of the delay of him streaming to the RTMP server, which then was broadcast outwards, there was a delay involved in that stream getting to me to then getting into Twitch. So that's where the delay of 15 seconds sort of came in. And we did actually improve that on the second Live Coders conference. And I will talk about a little bit about what we used on that one. So lessons learned from Live Coders Conference 1 were the VM in Azure should be a GPU instance. You should not try and CPU encode your stream, especially on something that is a VM and technically the CPU is shared. You can have dedicated, but for the cost that we were running this on of virtually nothing, it was a case of
we needed right. You need because streaming required a lot of CPU and also GPU, but like it's both.
It depends which so okay, when you broadcast, you encode your video to be pushed into Twitch, up to Twitch or whatever streaming platform you're using at the time. If you use CPU encoding, it uses the CPU to encode that video, which is high CPU usage. If you use hardware encoding or GPU encoding, it uses the GPU to encode that stream. Now, what happens then is your CPU usage does drop dramatically if you're using GPU encoding. So, for example, if you're just using CPU, you can use the 100% of CPU all the time, just because that's what it's doing. That's its job, is to encode that stream. When you switch that to GPU, the CPU side of things drops to about 10%. And that's one of the issues we actually had, was it was at 70 to 80, 90% the whole time. And when you were trying to flick between scenes, there was a bit of lag on that. And that's where overlays weren't quite working, because they were lagging out because of the CPU usage. And that's where we had a few problems. So this is where we went with the GPU instance.
Okay. I thought maybe because it's different when we're like on my machine, what I understood was I needed a machine that is really CPU heavy to have a good stream. But maybe because I'm not a server and I'm like just a broadcaster.
Little bit. I mean, what graphics card do you have, and what CPU do you have?
I don't know.
Well, there you go then.
I have a good machine. It's a good machine. Like,
no, so it's the same with any machine, and this is why people say, "Oh, you've got to go for a big CPU," because hardware encoding is good and does take away that CPU load. However, hardware encoding is the actual is optimized. That's the word. It's optimized for higher bit rates. So when you stream, you're looking at a bit rate of around about 2,500 to 3,000 kilobits a second. Hardware encoders are optimized for between 25,000 and 150,000 kilobits a second. So but they've got better in recent years, and that's why GPU encoding is taking that forefront on how good it is at encoding stuff.
And now I'm just trying to see if I found, because like I know approximately what I had, but I don't want to say bad things on stream and then it will be recorded. So my CPU is a AMD Ryzen 7, and then it's 2700X 8-core processor. So it's not, it's good, right? I have 32,
it's a good CPU. Yeah,
it's a 32 gigs of RAM, so like that I know I have plenty of stuff. And I'm just looking for my graphics card. I know it's a good one too, but I won't find
he's gonna find it. He will find it.
And NVIDIA. Okay, let's go open this. Because I do, you know, when I upgrade this PC, I didn't want to play. I did that for many years where I was building my PC, but for that when I was no, I will go to the store, say, hey, this is what I want to do. What's your suggestion, kind of thing.
Yeah, no. So CPU and GPU encoding is valid, but with server grade stuff, it's typically lower clock speeds as well.
Yeah. Oh, I have a GeForce GTX 1660 Ti.
That's good enough. There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so well, I think right now I'm using more my CPU to encode though.
Yeah.
But maybe I should, since my stream are more. Like it's not heavy on graphic animation and stuff. When I need to compile, I could, like if you're telling me like I should experiment though. Maybe I will do that this week or next week. Try to switch to GPU, so when I compile, when my stream is requesting me more CPU, you know, still have a lot of bandwidth free for the stream.
Definitely give it a go. You will see it, because I've been streaming on GPU encoding for the 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
I've been
okay.
Yeah.
Ah, your stuff is good. I saw your stream on your personal channel. That's cool.
So,
do you want to show us a little bit how we could build something similar, or get inspired to build something similar?
Yes. First thing first, I will talk about the RTMP servers. So we've talked about the GPU server, and we'll sort of take a little bit of a dive on where to create that and how to create those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the RTMP side of things, because that was one thing that we failed on in the first instance, because we tried to set that up ourselves and we had a giant lag of like 15 seconds. So what we did do is we used, it's in the Azure Marketplace, is a thing called Wowzer. Oh no, sorry, Wowzer was one of the options. Sorry, the one we did use was Ant Media Server. Ant Media Server is, Major Gamer Geek, newer NVIDIA, better NVANC. There we go. I think that's about right. So we used Ant Media Server, and Ant Media Server is a paid-for service. And what they do is they have a community or an enterprise version, and their enterprise version has a RTMP lag of around about 1 second. So what they've done is they've built the software so it works much better than anything that we could configure ourselves. Like, for example, you, me, just anyone who wants to put on a conference, I do actually recommend that they go and check out Ant Media Server, because if the actual cost of it is nothing compared to the setup time, and you get that extra sort of no lag. You get that almost zero latency. It's like, I had a stream from Chef Brent on LCC2, Live Coders Conference 2, and it was like I was receiving that broadcast less than a second on the broadcast server.
That's impressive. Do you have a link for us? So I could. You won't be able to paste the URL in the chat of the Twitch, but if you send it to me, I can share it to the chat.
What I'll do is I'll do one better. I'll show you where to find it.
Oh.
So I'm going to share my screen, if that's all right, friend. Apparently, I'm still. Am I still sharing it? I am still sharing it. There we go. I forgot to stop sharing in the pre-show. So what we have is we have our Azure portal right here, and if I type in Ant Media, and there we have Ant Media Server Enterprise Edition. Oh, what did you think? Sorry.
NVIDIA.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Ant Media.
Okay,
yeah, Ant Media.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't know. I really don't know what it is. The only Ant stuff that I know that is computer sciences related is a build agent, I think, called Ant. Like MS Build.
Yeah, yeah. Is that ENT?
No, I think it's ANT, like an ant, right? The little.
Yeah. Okay.
I could be wrong though. Okay, sorry. Continue.
So yes, this is Ant, as in the little creatures, the little insects, and it's a media server. And what they do is, you can do all sorts of. So you can actually push your RTMP stream to an Ant Media server, and then it will push that out to Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, for example. And that's their built-in thing. That's what they've built into this. So it's all there, ready for you to go, all set up for you, ready to go, and it's just perfect for the use case that we had. And the setup time that it would take me to build my own RTMP server with all the right SDKs and APIs, this was perfect. The one reason I chose Ant Media Server over Wowzer, because Wowzer is another option, and that's WOWZA. This option, the Ant has their own API as well, so you can add stream keys. You can make sure that people are streaming to the correct endpoint, and you can actually check if an endpoint is live or not. So, for example, if I gave you a stream key as a speaker, and you said I was pushing my talk to that server, I can say, okay, that one's live. I'll switch the scene to that automatically, and it's got webhooks as well, which is there's that little extra thing that you need or wanted, and this has it. So that was the main one. So that's what I wanted to talk about on the RTMP side of things.
Okay.
So when it comes to the Windows Server side of things, for the OBS server, it's Windows Server 2016. You can use 2019. It was just that's the option that comes up for me. Now, what happens is where we go down to the size, we specifically want to go for an NVIDIA NV6. Now, you may look at the price of that
and freak out
and go, oh, £640 a month. So you're looking at X number of dollars a month. I think the dollar mark is around about $750 a month. You are only using this while you're streaming, so for the conference. So the total cost of Live Coders Conference 2, that included 3 Ant Media servers and 1 broadcast VM, was under $120.
It's pretty cool considering the costs of a conference. Like it's nothing.
Yes, it had some more cost in terms of person time and people time. But I'm talking that money cost of
Yeah.
this is what, and this includes the enterprise version of Ant Media Server, which is on a per server basis and is something like 30 cents an hour or 35 cents an hour on a pay as you go basis. And again, they're only up and running when you've got the conference going. So yeah, it was under $120 for the whole thing.
Pretty cool.
And that was a 10-hour stream. So you're looking at what, $12 an hour, which is pretty good for
Indeed.
running that. And what I'll do is I'll go into the size of these and just go to NV. There's a few options. What you have is the NV6, NV12, and NV24. Now, the NV6 is a single GPU. The NV12 is dual GPU, and I think the NV24 is 4 GPU.
Wow.
And there's also a 32, which I'm not quite sure. But at £2,000 a month, I wasn't going to look at that point.
Yeah. But that's when you're leaving it open all the 24/7. But still, like, of course, even if you're just doing an hour or 2 hours or something like that, it will be more costly. Bigger is the VM. It makes sense, totally.
Of course, yeah.
But like compared to buying a real server with all that power and then not using it for the rest of the year and still paying for it.
Oh yeah. By the way, don't pick anything above an NV6. The reason being, you do not need more than one GPU at all in this whole thing. So.
Oh really? I was pretty sure you were going for the NV12.
Nope, we were on a 6. Now it's got plenty of, it's 6 virtual CPUs, plenty of memory, and the hard disks, you don't really need to worry about the hard disk space. That is, all it's doing is pushing these speakers streams straight through and out the other side onto Twitch. So yeah, base NV6 and you're good to go. And that's no issues whatsoever. Now, the big thing that I found is, where do you get the drivers from for the GPUs? Now, Frank has got the link for this and will supply it to whoever needs it and pass it around. But what we've got is the install NVIDIA GPU drivers on N series VMs. Scroll down to the NVIDIA grid drivers, and then you've got the version 11 ones for 2019, 2016, or Windows 10 builds, and those are the ones you need.
Oh, pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems like a large install and everything like that, but it's very much needed. You don't even have to adjust settings once you've installed them. It's just a case of, so the system recognizes it's there. Oh, excuse me, I'm just going to grab a drink. So that is basically it in terms of VM. I haven't got a VM set up at the moment, but that is the basis of that. But the next thing I'm going to talk about is the infrastructure. So I was talking before about the fact that we had satellite RTMP servers, and those satellite RTMP servers were in US East, US West. A European one, I think, had it in UK South, and we had one over on the other side of the world, either Australia or New Zealand. I cannot remember where at that point. It was just over there. And what we had issues with in the first one was, well, luckily I solved this before we went live with Live Coder Conference 1, because otherwise the cost would have been slightly more. Is with Azure, you pay for egress. So you pay for any data that goes out of Azure. So what we would have had, if I was connecting the stream, the RTMP server in Australia, Europe, and US West to the broadcast server, which was actually based in US East, I would have had to, if I was just directly connecting via IP address, like it would have been the external IP address. And it wouldn't have gone internal. It would have gone out of Azure in Australia and into Azure in US East.
Yeah, because you are changing regions. That's how they call it, right?
Yeah.
They have 5 regions, I think, in Azure. So when you're passing, because you could transfer from one data center to the other without like that outgress fee, if they are both like there's transaction and like, you know, but like what the fee you're talking about, it's when you're passing from a region to from another one. Yeah.
Or a region from another one, or just out of Azure.
Well, yeah, like if you go out. Yes.
Yeah. So the major thing we had to think about there was, how do we do this? And then I discovered something that was included in Azure, and hopefully we've got it here. This is interesting. That one's missing. There were 2 networks here. So back over there, what I've got is I've got 2 virtual networks, or I should have 2. There you go. It just needed a bit of a refresh. We have US East VNet and US West VNet. Now, US East is under 10.1.0.0 and US West is under 10.2.0.0. So, but these 2 networks can't communicate with each other at the moment. There's no communication between the 2 of them. And the one thing I found was peering. And it's peerings down here on this list. And when you go into that, he says, oh, there isn't anything. So let's go through and add one in. Okay. So what we have is we have name of peering from US East VNet to remote network. What we're going to do is we're going to select the remote network first down here. And the remote network is going to be US West VNet. So we're going.
One sec, I will switch. So both of us are now in the top right corner. Otherwise, I was hiding information on the form.
Oops! It's for some odd reason it's come up with my name in that autocomplete form. But what we'll do is we'll do east to west and west to east. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So basically we've got east to US West, we've selected the US West VNet, and we've got west to east, which is the opposite gateway.
Yep.
And we say allow virtual network access from one side and other side. We don't need to enable the forwarded traffic, and go. And as you can see on the right hand side here, well, no, you
not
can't
anymore because we're
as you can see here, is we're adding the 2 virtual 2 network pairings. I call it pairing, but it's peering.
How do you call it?
I think it is peering.
Should do a Twitch voting, a poll.
Yeah, it's peer to peer. So we'll call it peering. So now we've got east to west is connected to US West, and if we go back, if we go to, that was on the US West East VNet.
Okay.
So if we go into the US West VNet, we've got west to east is also connected. So now what we can do is, if we have a VM in US East or a VM in US West, you can use the internal IP addresses to connect to those servers.
Okay.
And you don't pay for data transfer.
Even if you're changing regions?
Apparently so.
I'm definitely not an expert in networking. That's like, I always need to read 3 and 4 times the documentation, make sure of it, or just ask for help. One of my colleagues that is more equipped for infrastructure. I forgot. Like at the end of my project or task, I know, I understand now, and then like I don't touch it for 6 months, and like, you know, after 6 months, like a million years after, it's like, how was working again? Okay, I thought when you're changing region, there's definitely a fee there, but maybe it's much smaller because now you stay in Azure, so it doesn't go out like you said before. You are really going out and in again.
Unless I missed it on the bill.
No, you would know by now.
Yeah. I didn't see anything at the time, so it may have been a fluke that we got it for free.
No, don't think so.
I will find out as well in that case, because I do not know. Should we have a little bit of a research on this one? Because that was interesting. Network peering price.
That's what I'm also doing on my side.
Okay, so so I've got the diagram, troubleshoot, constraints, pricing. There's a nominal price, it says.
Yeah, that's the thing. So they will charge you ingress and egress traffic are charged, but they will be smaller.
Oh, it's okay. So it's an eighth of a penny.
Yeah.
Or an eighth of a cent per gigabyte. So it's not a lot.
No. So like that's the thing. So you're winning. So it's probably much faster because you stay in Azure, and then it will you get charged by a fraction of the price if it was going out completely. Not going out is not like that expensive, but when you're talking about like a constant stream, like, you know, there's a lot of data, right? If you are streaming for 17 hours, something like that. No, not 17. How much? Yeah, was it
the first hours? The first one was 17 hours, and
yeah, like, you know, the prep before and like
yeah. So, but yeah. I mean, okay, so there is a smaller cost on that network peering, but it is a lot smaller than it would be going out.
Yeah. So you're winning.
And so you're definitely winning, and by winning, it was in terms of gigabytes, you're looking at hundreds over that 17 hours. Especially when it came to the number of people's streams that were coming into the box and being transferred between those regions into that central region. It's a lot of traffic, and to not notice it on the bill, I think that sort of signifies that was a little bit of a win on that one. Sorry for the misinformation on that one. Sorry, Frank.
No, it was just like I said. I'm not the best one, but I tend to memorize like where it will cost a lot for my client. So I remember that going out, try to avoid that, or try to walk around, or try to whatever. So, but I was just surprised that even between. But yeah, so inbound, outbound. Yeah, so without your peering, the the five first gig are free for a month, but then after that, before in my I don't know what I don't know if I'm Canadian dollar or US dollar. Before it was 1 cent, and now it's, if I round it, it's 9 cents for a 5 to 10 gig. So like it's much, like it's not that crazy, right? But you know, when you pile them, then yeah, it becomes
a thing, doesn't it? It's,
yeah. But like that's why compared to 1 cent before, so we're talking about a ratio 1 to 9 or 1 to 8, and like, you know, then like with it worked by like steps. So like you have up to 5, then 5 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, and like, you know, later, and it's going lower and lower and lower. But still, like at the best price, it's 5 cents compared to 1 cent.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely a good thing.
Okay, that's a good move. Yeah, we'll remember that now. Like, yeah, it could cost you, but there's a workaround ish. And I'm sure question of performance also, I'm sure it helps.
It definitely helped with the performance.
Because you're staying in Azure.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I'm afraid, is all I've got to demo today. But if anyone's got any questions, please do ask in chat, because I'm more than happy to help. So
what kind of so did you create everything manually? I'm assuming yes, because it was for one time.
Yes, it's something that I would like to go back to in the future, and maybe make this something that you can do through the marketplace, or at least have your own scripts to do so. So you can go, okay, I want to set up a broadcast VM and X satellite RTMP servers, and it goes and does that for you, with all the peering in place and everything like that. So I think that's something that I want to go back to and do. I am unfortunately not that au fait with automation in Azure. It's something that I've never got down to sort of digging into, and it's something that I do want to do.
Yeah, because I'm assuming with an ARM template and a script, you could probably do most of everything.
Yeah,
I think, like, you know, installing things and stuff like that shouldn't be that of a problem. Or like, no, I say ARM template, but it could be what's the other one? Terraforms.
Yeah,
I am more comfortable in ARM.
I don't think there's like nothing you can't do with a script.
Yeah, no. And Azure is very open on that side anyway, so yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. And yeah,
sorry.
Sorry.
What I was going to do is I was going to go back a little bit further and sort of say, but in the previous part of the stream, I said we had well, hang on, what have you done? Ah, there you go. Sorry, wrong screen. I was like, what's he doing? What button? At the start of the stream, we said, okay, we've got the VMs, which I've talked about, the RTMP v1 and the GPU instance, and the GPU instance being the one where you're going to be having everything all built into one. And I said all around automation. So it's not about automation this isn't about automation of actually creating the network and infrastructure yourself. What I'm going to talk about is a little bit of the automation that we built in terms of the broadcast and the production side of things. So what I did is we used a thing called OBS WebSockets, which is an add-on to OBS, where you can communicate with it via a WebSocket API. And we had an extra app service that we used, and it was a small app on top of that app service, which changed scenes and did sort of a scheduling overlay, so we could actually switch between we could switch the titles on Twitch. So the stream title changed to the current talk, and also the commands in chat changed to who was now and next, which was pretty interesting. That was developed for the second conference, but it was very much linked into that whole Azure build it all as one unit, here you go type of thing, and we're sort of expanding on that, or I've been expanding on that and trying to make it like an open source bit of software.
Interesting. I was going to ask you a little bit more detail on that side, like as a producer, where you like remote desktop into that VM, or was it running just from your, I don't know, Stream Deck or command from your machine and then just sending commands? Like how as a producer, how it was? Because I know one of my colleagues did try to play that for us, because this show we are 2 hosts, because we are 2 in the team. With at that time when we start 30 episodes ago, only 2 of us had like a good connection laptop and something like that, so that's why. And we were looking for hosting a VM, and we did quickly explore, like he did experiment, and he was saying that he was getting disconnected from the VM, but maybe he didn't pick the good VM. Also, he was doing a bunch of experiment on his spare time.
Yes, is the answer. With the VM and the production, it still at the moment is very much you're logged in, and you've got to monitor the audio and make sure everything's up and running. In the future, I hope to sort of transfer that out, so you don't have to be logged in, and you can just be logged into the website and probably have a remote monitoring system. But that's a little bit sort of harder to configure, and if things go wrong, you then need to log in. And
you never get disconnected?
No, I never got disconnected.
Okay. I don't know, apparently it was always getting kicked out of his own VM, and at some point he couldn't even, like, the stream was continuing, meaning the VM was still up. I don't know if Jason, if you're, I know Jason may have more details if he's on the chat, but
could this be the Azure security thing to do with remote desktop and session times?
Like if you're live, if you're in.
No, I think there is a session timeout thing within the security management section of Azure.
They didn't change it. Depending on.
And I think it depends on your current settings and who has those settings. But yeah, I believe there is.
Depending on which subscription you use. I know we have like we share all the Cloud Advocate, like a subscription where we do our demo, and that one has a little bit more bandwidth, because you know, if you want to do a learning machine, you need a lot of juice, so we're less restricted, and like we have more opportunity in that one, but the restriction and the rules are much stronger and tight. So maybe that was a thing, or maybe it's just something he didn't know or forgot or whatever. Because I did use VMs and I was not kicked out of my VM, but then I was not streaming traffic, so maybe at some point it got flagged. I don't know. Because of course, you know, Azure is checking the VMs to make sure you're not Bitcoin mining and stuff like that.
Oh, do they?
I need to shut down my stuff.
Yeah. Oh no! Quick, shut it all down. Yeah, yeah, that'd be fun. So those GPU instances, I only use them once, and it is for conferences. But
no, I think they're like, I think it's legit. I think anyway, like if you're Bitcoin mining, it will be like 24/7 all the time, forever. Like not like for even 17 hours. Though you didn't use that VM for that conference, so that only for the second one. Like yeah, you may raise the flag, but like then they check, it's all like, you know, like he's streaming out like it's a server. The machine is pretty good at detecting what it is, right? They don't want to, they are respecting the client privacy, but you know, at some point they also need to double check security, because some resources are shared. So
yes, exactly.
At some point they need to. It's pretty cool. Thank you a lot for sharing all that that information.
You're welcome. You're
really
welcome.
Like it.
I mean, the one aim for this whole system is we are fairly open about what we've done, and we are open about the software we've used. And Media Server, the community edition, is actually open source, so that's on GitHub. OBS is, of course, another open source piece of software, and so is OBS WebSockets. So we're not sort of restricting it. We've just put a bunch of open source software together and used it, and maybe added our little own sparkle on top of that. But it's one of those things that anyone could do this, and anyone can use the same system. So go ahead.